How's it going, everybody? It's Aaron the Pedantic. Lately, I've been doing videos and writing stuff about just why it matters the way that you use space in your dungeons. And one of the very first things that came up whenever I was trying to get all this stuff figured out was torches, because torches are pivotal to the dungeon experience in a lot of ways. Dungeons are typically very dark, right? And expansive, they run out. But in order for us to make torches matter, there are a few things that we need. We need large dungeons. The 5-room dungeon just isn't going to cut it, just by sheer virtue of the fact that it does not. If you don't have enough real estate for them to walk through, then they're not going to run out of torches. And the exhaustible nature of torches is one of the things that really adds a lot of tension to the game. If you're not really using a larger dungeon, why even bother make them count torches or anything like that? Just who cares? They're going to be fine. They've got enough light that really then all you're worried about is, do they have a hand to hold it? Maybe some weight, but even then, probably not, because it's only going to be like a pound per torch. At that point, why bother? To me, torches are a thing that matter in large dungeons. So, let's look at the life of a torch. So torches, they cast a 40-foot radius of light in first edition, and they do so for up to an hour. Now, some people will use a usage die mechanic such that, for instance, while they're doing random monster checks, then there's a certain set of numbers on the die that will indicate that a torch is extinguished, adds a little bit of randomness to it, spices things up, and makes it where you're not having to track exactly, an hour and all of that. It does have the side effect, though, of making where the players have less of an ability to judge on longer expeditions how long it's going to take, how much time they actually have left with their torches. It's a little bit harder for them to judge whenever it could be that, they go on the same torch for hours and hours, and then they have just this long string of torches extinguishing over and over and over again, and they end up running out of light. And running out of light is a huge problem. It's a huge thing to be terrified of, especially in AD&D. There's just a ton of things that come with it. The obvious things there being that it's as if you cannot see your enemies unless you have dark vision. Infravision, I'm sorry. I've been around too much 5th edition. What can I say? So unless you have infravision, in which case, yeah, you can see your enemy. But otherwise, you're going to have a -4 to hit. You're going to have a 4 penalty to your armor class. I say penalty because some people, convert to, you know what I mean. You're going to have those penalties. You're going to have it's more likely for you to get lost. I know for me, if I'm running a group where there is no light, then they are not able to reference their maps, period. Because I'm sorry, but infravision is not going to reveal the ink on a map. The way that I see it, infravision is more kind of like heat vision, more or less. And it's just not going to be a variance of heat gradients on the map. It's just not. So you can't read the map. So the players can't read the map. No more map for you guys. You gotta get some light somehow, and then maybe you can start reading the map again. Otherwise, you got to try and feel around and go by memory. Oof, that's tough. It almost gets to a point where I'm like, all right, we're just gonna roll a die to see if you get out of here alive. Or how long it takes. Something of that nature. How many casualties? So that is why torches are important. That is the big reason why we have to keep light on ourselves, is because we're not all elves, hopefully. We're not all dwarves. We can't all see in the dark. So because of that, and even if we could, we still can't see that well. So let's try and keep things illuminated. Okay, well, let's look at the life of a torch. So we're going to assume, because we can't really go by the random usage die in terms of, other than probabilities, we can't really say, oh, it's going to take this long. What we do have is we do have everything broken up in turns. For people that aren't familiar, a turn is 10 minutes. I'm just saying that, just in case somebody from more recent editions happens to make their way here. A turn is 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes, there are certain things that you can do that will take 10 minutes. Certain things that you'll do that take maybe a few minutes. And a lot of these are defined more clearly in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons First Edition, and I'm sure in Second Edition. I haven't read Second Edition from the Game Master standpoint, but they are often broke up in minutes or turns. So let's look at some of the things that you can do. In one turn, you can move your movement rate while mapping and moving cautiously. So what that really means is that let's say that your slowest party member has a movement rate of 60 feet. Now I'm putting it into feet. I'm not doing the whole 6 inches, just because it can get confusing for people. But so we'll say that you have a movement rate of 60 feet because somebody is in heavy armor. And that means that in a 10-minute period, you can move 60 feet down the corridor and also be mapping at the same time and moving cautiously, less likely to be surprised, etc. So that is what you're. That's not a whole lot of distance. And so if you're going to do 5 turns of those, then you're getting 300 feet. And the reason I stop at 5 and not 6 is because most people should know that every 6th turn needs to be spent resting unless you're going to incur penalties for exhausting yourselves. So you can move probably in your average party, unless they are traveling extremely light, you can move about 300 feet every 10 minutes. No, I'm sorry, every hour. Every hour you can move about 300 feet in the dungeon. Now, I will, go ahead and stop some people in the comments who are going to say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. How can So again, you are creeping along and you are mapping. So you have somebody who is, taking details of the room, mapping them down. Here's a door here. Here's the thing that we found here. If you're not doing that, then sure, they can travel faster. But again, they're going to be doing so at their own peril because we need to make dungeons these expansive places where all these things matter. And there's a whole lot of choices that you need to make. Maybe sometimes it's more beneficial for you to not map. And maybe then you can get more done on the life of a single torch. And whenever you're backtracking, if you've already mapped, if you already know the area, you're going to move a lot more quickly. I don't remember the exact reference in First Edition, but I know that in Osric it says you move about 5 times as quickly whenever you have already been through an area and you've already mapped it. Okay, so movement, that's one. All right, now searching an area, a 10-foot by 10-foot area takes a turn. So if you are searching a larger area, then you could be taking as much as we'll say a 50 by 50 foot area. That could take an entire hour. And sometimes that's necessary. Maybe there's something very important in this room because you've mapped all these things out and that there has to be a switch somewhere that's going to open a secret door that will get to this room, but you've got about 50-foot long wall to check, and you wanted to get it done as quick. You want to get that done, and maybe you've got everybody else on watch for one reason or another. Then that's going to take you an entire hour to search that entire room. And take your breather. So searching your 10-foot by 10-foot area also takes a turn. Now, this is another thing that I've read it places. I can't remember the exact reference. I know that it's in Osric. Osric is kind of like where I go to for quick references and things like that, which I know people are going to say it's not the exact same, but it's very close. And that is that whenever you are casually examining a room, then it's going to take about 10 minutes. So whenever you are, you've kicked open the door, you fought the enemies, you've taken your moment of rest. At that point, if you want to examine what's in the room, especially if you're like picking up treasure and doing all those kinds of things, and you're mapping it, then it's going to take 10 minutes, basically. I think that that's a very fair rule. It works very well. It makes it where it's easy to keep track of time and keep things moving in a way that doesn't feel like you're accomplishing way too much in way too short of time. It works really well. So I use it, and it's going to eat up time. So that means just examining 5 rooms. Just the act of examining those 5 rooms is going to inevitably end up leading to needing a breather, and then that being a whole hour that has passed. So with these actions, we're already eating up a pretty decent amount of torches, even with you know, a few rooms, maybe 12 rooms. I feel like 12 rooms is a good way to have torches matter. It's a good size, and you can go from there. Anything upward from there is just going to make it matter more and more and more and more. The fact all these things that they have to consider is going to matter more and more and more and more. The reason I say 12 is because whenever you look at the stocking procedures that people often use, such as the random stocking procedure that is used in Moldvay Basic, you have a 33% chance of a monster in a room. You have a 33% chance of a room being empty. And then you have the rest is kind of like stuck in between there being some kind of special features or traps or maybe an unguarded treasure, those kinds of things. So because of that, that means that in a 12 room dungeon that you're going to have probably about 4 monsters. And anytime that you come into a combat, you're going to have a 10-minute, it's going to round up to 10 minutes. Well, let's say it rounds up to 10 minutes. Technically, the language is that you will spend 10 minutes after the combat is over to, recoup, to get your stuff together, to rest and all of that. Which I guess if you've done that rest, then you can push back the next one or whatever. But regardless, that means that we are adding more situations where more time is elapsing and those torches are dwindling down. And if you have a larger dungeon, because a 5-room dungeon, I feel like there's not really a whole lot of opportunity for random encounters. But in a 12-room dungeon, it's probably going to happen unless you have the frequency set very, very low. Like you're checking very infrequently, and it's maybe a 1 in 12 chance or something like that. Not knocking it if that's what you do, but for me, it's usually more of a 1 in 6 chance, and it's every 2 turns. I have seen 3 turns also be a suggestion. I like 2. Maybe that's because I'm hateful. I'm a bad dungeon master. But regardless, you could assume that in a 12-room dungeon, there's probably going to be at least 2 random encounters that are going to occur. So we can add even like another 2 turns, being consumed, just resting after this random encounter. There may be some running and backtracking and things like that. What I did, though, is I took all I don't want to neglect to mention the other things that take bits of turns, but not turns entirely. So those would be things like kicking down the door, which takes a round, a 1-minute round, and trying to disarm a trap, trying to pick locks. Those things can take up to four rounds. So like up to between 1 and 4 minutes often. Listening at the door, every attempt is going to be about a minute. So these are all things that they get up to the parts of turns. I usually kind of like would round up to or down, just depending on the situation, the halfway point, because it's easier to deal in half turns than it is in, 0.2. You spend 9.2 turns. You can do that. And I usually, if I am going to do that, I'm going to keep a set of dice on the table and just track the minutes, which, I mean, it's good to do that anyway. But, just for the mental math, sometimes it's easier to keep it into the halves. So if they are trying to pick a complex lock, then maybe it takes 4 minutes. So that's going to round up to a half. Maybe it's once they kick down the door after that it goes up to the half, because then you've got a whole 0.5 turns. So those are yet again more things that are going to take more time. So what I did is I kind of calculated, looking through the dungeon that I made that is 12 rooms, or at least the first floor is 12 full rooms. I tried to calculate just how much time would elapse going through this place. And what I came up with ended up being quite a few torch durations, quite a few. Really me giving my lowest estimate, it ended up being that, so simply mapping the 12 rooms ends up being at least 2 hours, just because of the fact that, again, casually examining a room and mapping it is going to take 10 minutes. So 12 of those 10-minute segments, or turns rather, is going to result in 2 hours or more. So at least 4 turns spent recovering from fighting, because we have monsters in 4 different rooms. We also have random encounters that's going to add maybe another 2. So that's another hour. we're gonna have quite a bit of movement, especially if there's backtracking. And the way that I tend to build things, there's a lot of diverging paths. So if you want to explore the other parts, let's say you went the way that there isn't a stairwell, then you're going to have to go. You have to retrace your steps, and that means that you're going to be spending a considerable amount of time just moving through the corridors and things like that. So I put a bare minimum of about another hour worth of that. Altogether, I ended up with about 6 hours, about 6 hours. So it's about 6 torches. And that is me being incredibly gracious and kind of maintaining that they're not being overwhelmingly cautious. They're not spending a whole lot of time searching for things or strategizing, because even then, them just sitting and discussing, even as players, should eat up turns, because there is a comparison there that needs to be made to the player characters actually making these plans and things like that. So that should kind of give you an idea of the life of a torch. We need to be tracking time to make torches matter. And the larger the dungeon, the more torches they're going to have to carry with them. I mean, that 6 torch duration, that could be just for one person to carry a torch. But if you have just one person carrying a torch, you have problems. And if you have a bunch of people carrying torches, then you have different problems. This is how you can make torches matter. So aside from just the sheer exhausting of torches, we also have the fact that we need to have many things illuminated, if at all possible. So you would want to have it where occasionally it's beneficial for people to be able to throw a torch ahead in order to see what's beyond an area that you can get to. That is going to be another thing that's going to exhaust a torch. Just the fact that illumination is necessary is going to be really important. We also have the fact that people are going to need hands to use them. And this means that they're either going to have to hire people, and hopefully the people are going to be willing to continue going, because morale is a thing, right? So for them to hire henchmen to carry torches, it means that they are exhausting their funds, which is a good thing. If they're not exhausting, and it also means that there's more noise being made, so it's less likely for them to surprise their enemies. So those are considerations that need to be made. But if they are carrying the torches themselves, then they are unable to carry other things. This becomes really, really serious when we're talking about fighters, especially, all the fighter subtypes, thieves. Whenever you're playing in editions where thieves can use all weapons, which isn't every edition, but it is in quite a few. You have your clerics. Definitely, they often need those hands because they've got shields, they've got holy symbols. Your magic users often need their hands because they're going to have material components. They're going to have somatic components. There's going to be stuff that they're going to be needing to do with their hands that, holding a torch is not really going to be that easy. So people have to choose what's important to them, what is worth sacrificing. Maybe the person with the highest dexterity bonus is the one who's going to carry the torch, because maybe they can sacrifice, not having a shield on them. Maybe a person who just really can't carry a whole lot of heavy stuff. Maybe for them to just hold a single torch, just weighs a pound. Maybe that's a decent trade-off rather than them carrying a big honking weapon. Who knows? Those are things that you need to consider, and you have to be sure to challenge your players. Because players are going to just be like, oh, I'm carrying a torch, but they may not think of the fact that, you also you're trying to cast a spell, and you're a cleric, you're trying to turn undead. And it says quite specifically that sometimes you need to drop your shield, or drop your weapon, sheath your weapon in order to be able to do that. So if you're going to have to do that, you may not be able to, attack in return just yet. You may have a penalty to your armor class, things like that. Those considerations do matter. We also have the fact that they require flint and steel. I mean, that's pretty minor. It doesn't actually, I don't think it even weighs anything. When you look at the way that it's written up, it should weigh a little something, but I'd say way less. It's less than a pound, so it's negligible. Who really cares? Flint and steel is not going to be, it's not going to be heavy. It's not going to be cumbersome or anything like that, but they at least need to spend a gold piece and not lose it. And they need to have it. If you're in the middle of a battle and somebody needs to light a torch because somebody's dropped a torch, which I'll talk about in just a minute, then that means that, maybe they need to get a flint and steel from somebody who actually has it, unless they all have it. So just make sure everybody has it. Otherwise, it would be a pretty interesting scenario when this happens. When I say this, I'm referencing the rule that I think a lot of people forget. I forget myself quite frequently, but I'm trying to make a better effort of remembering it. And that is that when you are surprised, there is a 25% chance that you will drop what you're holding. So that could be your torch. It is often your weapon, but it could be your torch. And if you only have one person holding a torch and that torch drops, then it may go out. And if it goes out, you're in darkness. And now the enemy has this massive advantage on you. Now people are probably going to be struggling to find their, find what they need, find the flint and steel out of their bag, find another torch. Finding the torch is probably going to be the easier part. And then, being able to strike it up in the middle of a fight. It's incredibly, incredibly risky. It's not something that I would say you're guaranteed to have happen quickly. It's almost one of those things that I would use some of the rules that I've picked up over the years, such as it takes D6 rounds. Maybe D6 is a little bit rough, but it takes a variable amount of rounds in order to pick something out of your bag in the heat of combat. That could be something that you end up being stuck with, unless you want to completely sacrifice your defensive capabilities and just sit there and rifle nonstop. Then I would say maybe then I'll give you a pass. But otherwise, if you're trying to defend yourself and you're also trying to grab something out of your bag, then you might be in for it. You might really be in for it. If you have this is what would make it necessary for multiple people to be carrying torches, because you never know when you're going to get surprised and you're going to drop a torch and be stuck in the darkness. It's a very, very terrible thing to have happen. All this is there to create possibilities for tension to occur. These are procedural traps that are laid in order to make it where the players have something to worry about. And that's the thing, is that whenever we don't take these things seriously, whenever we don't put them in the context that makes them matter, then we lose the ability for tension to occur organically, where we're not having to rely on specific encounter setups and things like that to build tension. A lot of 5-room dungeons, I think that the only way that they really build a lot of tension is with very specific encounter setups, whereas part of the magic of a dungeon and what makes something a real dungeon is the fact that the mere fact that you are spending time there is going to cause problems. It's going to cause situations where you have to make choices that are going to matter. And if you make the wrong choice, then you're going to get screwed. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be going over, more stuff when it comes to light and things like that in the future, I'm sure. But torches, they hold a very specific place in my heart, just because to me, that is the low level stuff. That is the low level worries that I absolutely adore. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, anything that I left out, anything you disagree with. I'd love to hear it. And I will absolutely be continuing to talk about why I like big dungeons, and I cannot lie. Hope y'all take it easy and have a good day.